I drove to the vineyard to meet the contractor. Through the cottage window, I saw my son, with a woman who wasn't his wife. In the house my wife and I had built over 40 years. My heart shattered. Instinct wanted me to burst through the door, scream. But I didn't. I pulled out my camera, took photos, collected evidence. I didn't just want to win. I wanted my son to lose everything. I wanted him to stand in court and realize the man who destroyed his life was me. Thank you for being here. Have you ever faced an impossible choice between loyalty and truth? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment. Quick note: this is a fictional story exploring complex family dynamics. The characters are imagined, but the moral questions, those are deeply real and worth reflecting on. Thursday, April 15th, 1:45 p.m. The 2-hour drive from Milwaukee to Door County used to feel like coming home. Now, 3 years after Susan's death, it felt like driving toward an empty house. I'm William Carson, 67 years old, retired law professor, widower. That last word still catches in my throat. Susan died 3 years ago, after a brief illness, leaving behind 40 years of memories at our vineyard in Door County, Wisconsin. 40 years of planting marquette vines, hosting harvest parties, building a life together on 10 acres overlooking Lake Michigan. The vineyard had been our sanctuary. Susan had studied viticulture, turned our retirement dream into a working winery. She'd planted every vine herself, knew each one like her own children. After she died, I closed the tasting room. Couldn't stand behind that counter without seeing her there, reading glasses perched on her nose, explaining terroir to curious tourists. I glanced at the dashboard. 1:42 p.m. George Matthews, the contractor, was expecting me at 2 o'clock to discuss repairing the dock. The wooden structure had weathered badly over winter, and Susan would have scolded me for letting it go this long. The vineyard appeared ahead. I turned onto the gravel drive, and the main house came into view, a 2-story farmhouse with white clapboard and green shutters. Behind it, partially hidden by rows of spring vines, sat the stone cottage. 200 yards from the main house, nestled at the property's edge with a view of the lake, it had been Susan's special place. One room with a fireplace, a daybed, her easel, and paints. She'd spent countless afternoons there painting Lake Michigan while I graded papers. I hadn't stepped inside since her death, but as I pulled up at 1:45 p.m., something stopped me cold. A silver BMW, sleek, unfamiliar, was parked behind the cottage. My hands tightened on the wheel. Then I saw the smoke. Thin gray tendrils rising from the chimney. I hadn't lit that fireplace in 3 years. I parked and stepped out quietly. The wind carried lake waves and something else, voices. Laughter. A woman's voice, light and intimate. Then a deeper response, male and disturbingly familiar. My pulse quickened. I approached the cottage on foot, staying close to the vineyard rows. The closer I got, the clearer the details: Wisconsin plates on the BMW A, Milwaukee parking sticker, wood smoke mixing with lake air. The voices grew louder, that woman's laugh again, comfortable and easy. The male voice responding with affection. I stopped 10 feet from the cottage, heart hammering. The large window, the one Susan had insisted on for painting, faced the lake. If I moved to the side, I could see inside without being seen. My hands were shaking as I pressed against the stone wall Susan and I had built together 30 years ago. I edged toward the window and looked inside. The room was dim, lit only by firelight, but I could see everything. My son Jonathan, 37 years old, married 9 years, father of 2, was on Susan's daybed with a woman I didn't recognize. Dark-haired, early 40s, they were kissing, touching, completely absorbed in each other. Her hand moved through his hair with practiced ease. His hand rested on her back. They moved together like they'd done this many times before. My knees buckled. I grabbed the stone wall to stay upright, rough mortar biting into my palm. This wasn't just infidelity. This was desecration. He'd brought her here to Susan's cottage, to his mother's sacred space. They were on the daybed, where Susan had napped and read. The quilt beneath them was the one she'd sewn herself, grapevines and waves in blue and green thread. Inside, Jonathan shifted, and firelight caught his face. He was smiling, relaxed. He whispered something, and the woman laughed. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, tender and familiar. I don't know how long I stood there. Time felt broken. The shock was physical, like being struck in the chest. My son was destroying his family in the place his mother had loved most in the world. A vehicle approached George Matthews's van, but I couldn't move, couldn't look away. Finally, instinct took over. Evidence. The words surfaced from decades of legal training. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. Click. The BMW license plate visible. Timestamp 2:03 p.m. Click. The cottage window, 2 silhouettes against firelight. Timestamp 2:03 p.m. Click. A wider shot, cottage vineyard lake. Timestamp 2:04 p.m. Even in shock, my mind defaulted to documentation. Proof. I somehow managed to meet George. Shake his hand, discuss the dock repairs with what must have seemed like normal composure. He left at 2:35 p.m. The BMW didn't move. Smoke still rose from the chimney. I sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel. I had to leave. If I confronted Jonathan now in this fury, I would say things that couldn't be unsaid. I started the engine and drove away slowly. In the rearview mirror, the stone cottage grew smaller. Smoke curled from its chimney. The same cottage where Susan had found peace, where she'd told me that family was everything. I drove back toward Milwaukee, photographs burning in my phone, the image of Jonathan and that woman seared deeper into my mind. But beneath the shock, something cold and sharp was forming. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I had evidence. I had timestamps. I had 40 years of teaching law to fall back on. Justice requires preparation. Preparation requires proof, and proof requires patience. Thursday, April 15th, 2:03 p.m. The moment I discovered my son was destroying his family in his mother's sacred space. The moment I decided I wouldn't let him get away with it. I was still pressed against the stone wall when 40 years of teaching law finally cut through the shock. Emotion loses cases. Evidence wins them. I drilled that principle into my students at Marquette Law School for decades. Now I needed to follow my own advice. I forced myself to breathe the way Susan used to coach me when I got worked up. Think first, act second, William. I checked my watch, 2:05 p.m. Inside the cottage, voices continued they weren't leaving yet, which meant I had time to do this right. I walked back to my car, legs shaky but functional. In the cargo area, I kept a digital camera for insurance photos. I grabbed it, now checked the battery, adjusted the zoom. My hands steadied as I worked. Taking action always helped. I wanted to burst through that door and confront Jonathan. It would feel good for about 10 seconds. Then he'd deny it, or she'd disappear, and I'd have nothing but anger. No. I needed documentation. Evidence that would hold up when this went to court. I circled through the vineyard, staying low between the rows. Susan's old walking path ran behind the cottage, bordered by the rose bushes she'd planted 20 years ago. From there, I had a clear view through the window without being seen. I crouched behind the roses and started shooting. The woman poured wine. I recognized the bottle. Our 2019 Chardonnay, the last vintage Susan oversaw before she got sick. They toasted by the fireplace, faces soft in the light. His hand rested on her back. She leaned into him, comfortable and familiar. This wasn't new. The ease between them, the practiced intimacy, this had been going on for months, maybe longer. My phone buzzed. George Matthews, running 20 minutes late, that okay? I texted back, let's reschedule for tomorrow. I kept shooting. Wine glasses, conversations, touches, each photo time-stamped, each one more evidence. At 2:45 p.m. they stood to leave. Jonathan walked her to the door, kissed her goodbye long and lingering. She headed to the silver BMW. I captured the license plate in perfect focus. Wisconsin plates clear as day. She drove away. But 10 minutes later, a white Lexus appeared from the other side of the main house. I hadn't noticed it before. The same woman got out, checked something near where the BMW had been parked, then drove off in the Lexus. Smart. They'd driven separately. No one would connect them. I photographed the Lexus plates too. At 3:10 p.m., after Jonathan's Honda CR-V disappeared down the drive, I finally approached the cottage. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. I hadn't been inside since Susan died. The day of her funeral, I'd locked it and walked away. Now I was entering because my son had desecrated it. The smell hit me: wood smoke, wine perfume, floral and expensive. The fireplace still glowed with embers. The daybed was neatly made, pillows arranged perfectly. Wine glasses washed and put away. She'd cleaned up meticulously, but she'd missed something. Susan's journal sat on the side table open. I knew that journal. Susan had kept it for years, writing about us, about life, about the vineyard. The last time I'd seen it 3 years ago, it had been closed on the shelf. Now it was open to a page from 1998. Susan's handwriting, small, precise, heartbreaking. Marriage isn't about never being tempted. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. William and I talked tonight about what commitment really means. It means seeing the whole person, flaws, fears, everything, and saying, I'm staying anyway. That's what makes us strong. The words blurred. My throat closed. I sat down in Susan's wicker chair by the window, and for the first time since her funeral, I broke. Not the quiet tears I'd allowed at the burial. These were the sobs that shake your whole body, the kind you can't control. I cried for Susan, who'd believed in choosing each other every day. I cried for Jessica, who probably had no idea. I cried for Grace and Noah, who would be shattered when this came out. And I cried because the boy Susan and I had raised, the one we'd taught about honor, had become someone I didn't recognize. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually the tears stopped. My breath steadied, and my lawyer's brain clicked back on. I needed help. Professional help. Someone who could dig deeper, who could find out who this woman was, and how long this had been happening. I pulled out my phone and called Paul Jensen. We'd gone to law school together back in the 70s. He'd burned out of criminal defense and became a private investigator, good at his job, discreet, trustworthy. I hadn't talked to him since Susan's funeral. He answered on the second ring. William Carson. It's been a while. How are you? My voice came out rough. Paul, I need you. Today, if possible. It's about Jonathan. A pause. What's going on? I looked at Susan's journal, still open to that page about commitment. I looked at the fireplace where my son had just been with another woman. I thought about Jessica at home in Madison making dinner, having no idea. I'll explain when you get here, I said. Can you come to the vineyard this afternoon? Give me 2 hours. I'll be there by 5:30. Thank you. William. His tone shifted, serious. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. That's what the evidence is for. I hung up and sat for another moment in Susan's chair, looking out at Lake Michigan. The waves rolled in steady and relentless, just like they had for 40 years. Think first, act second. Susan's voice in my head. Paul Jensen and I had known each other for 25 years. Law school classmates, corporate case partners, friends through good times and bad. But this was the first time I'd ever called him about family. He arrived at the vineyard at 5:30 p.m. sharp, stepping out of his silver Jeep with the focused expression I'd seen in 100 depositions. We skipped the pleasantries and went straight to my kitchen table. I showed him everything. The photos, the license plates, the timeline. It was harder than I'd expected, admitting my son's betrayal out loud. Paul studied each image without comment, his investigator's mind cataloging facts. "I'll run these plates tonight," he said finally. "You want the truth?" "William, all of it, because sometimes what we find is worse than what we imagined." "I want the truth, whatever it is." He nodded and left. 2 hours later, my phone rang. "The BMW belongs to Vanessa Collins," Paul said without preamble. 42 years old, marketing executive at Brennan and Associates in Milwaukee. Lives in Fox Point. He paused. "William, she's married. Husband's name is Andrew Foster, military officer 44 stationed at Fort McCoy. They've been married 12 years. My stomach dropped. Married. 2 marriages being destroyed. Paul confirmed. "I'm running Jonathan's financials now, bank records, credit cards. I'll need 48 hours for the deep dive, but I should have preliminary results Monday morning." "How long has this been going on?" "Working on that. I'll know more soon." After he hung up, I sat staring at the name he'd texted me. Vanessa Collins, Fox Point, one of Milwaukee's wealthiest suburbs. Marketing executive. Married to a military officer who trusted her. What kind of woman risks a 12-year marriage for an affair? And what kind of man helps her do it? Sunday dinner at Jonathan's house in Madison had been planned for 2 weeks. A normal family gathering, the kind Susan used to love. But now I was going to observe. Jessica answered the door with Grace and Noah behind her. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I'd seen my daughter-in-law dozens of times, but now I was looking with new awareness. The dark circles, the tension in her shoulders, the forced brightness. "William, come in. Dinner's almost ready." Grace hugged my legs. "Grandpa, we're having pot roast." Jonathan appeared from upstairs, phone in hand, barely looking up. "Hey, Dad. Work's crazy this week." During dinner, he checked his phone constantly. Jessica served food, cut Noah's meat, reminded Grace about manners. Jonathan contributed nothing except distracted nods. "Daddy, put your phone away," Grace said finally, her 8-year-old voice frustrated. "You're not even listening." Jonathan's expression darkened. "Grace, that's rude. I'm working." "It's Sunday. You said Sunday was family day?" "Grace." Jessica's voice was quiet but firm, smoothing over the tension. "That's enough, honey." Grace fell silent, hurt. The tension was suffocating, and Jonathan, the boy I'd raised to value family above everything, went right back to his phone. After dinner, he stood. "I need to take this call." He walked out to the backyard, leaving Jessica to clear plates alone. I helped her. We worked in silence until Grace wandered over and tugged my sleeve. "Grandpa, can I tell you a secret?" I crouched to her level. "Of course, sweetheart." Her brown eyes, Susan's eyes, filled with tears. "Mommy cries at night. I hear her through the wall, but when I ask if she's okay, she says she's just tired." She wiped her nose. "Is Mommy sick? Like Grandma was?" My heart shattered. This child was carrying her mother's pain because no one else would. "No, sweetie, Mommy's not sick. She's just going through something hard." "Can you help her, like you helped Grandma?" I pulled Grace into a hug. "I'm going to try. I promise." When I left at 8 p.m., Jessica walked me to the door looking exhausted. "Thanks for coming, William. I know it's been hard since Susan." "Jessica." I interrupted gently. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. Okay. She blinked, surprised. Of course. But we're fine. Really. She wasn't fine. Jonathan had left her alone with the kids, the house, the emotional labor, and she was still covering for him, protecting him, even as he destroyed their family. I drove home on Highway 90, hands tight on the wheel, thinking about Grace's tear-filled eyes, mommy cries at night. My phone rang as I passed Middleton. Paul. William, we need to meet tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at my office. His voice was grim. What I found, it's worse than an affair, a lot worse. My grip tightened. What do you mean? Not over the phone. But William, your son isn't just cheating. He's planning something. And Vanessa Collins isn't who she appears to be. She has a history. What kind of history? The kind that destroys families for profit. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Just prepare yourself. He hung up before I could respond. I drove the rest of the way in silence, Paul's words echoing. Worse than an affair. Planning something. A history. What could be worse than what I'd already seen? What was Jonathan planning? And who was Vanessa Collins, really? By the time I pulled into my driveway at 9:30 p.m., the questions were drowning me. I sat in my car in the dark, staring at the empty house I'd lived in alone for 3 years. I thought about Jessica's forced smile, Grace's whispered secret, Jonathan's cold distraction, and Paul's ominous warning. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'd learn the truth. Whatever it was, I had a feeling everything was about to get worse. But I also thought about Grace's question. Can you help her grandpa? I didn't know how yet. But I'd made her a promise. I arrived at Paul's office in downtown Milwaukee at 8:55 a.m. Monday morning. The building was a converted warehouse near the 3rd Ward, all exposed brick and industrial windows. Paul's PI firm occupied the 2nd floor. 3 rooms, filing cabinets, computers, and the permanent smell of coffee. He was waiting with 2 thick folders spread across his desk. Vanessa Collins has done this before, he said without preamble. Twice. I sat down slowly. Explain. Paul opened the first folder. Victim number 1, Marcus Reynolds, 43. Vice President of Software Development at a Chicago tech firm. Met Vanessa at a marketing conference in 2018. Affair lasted 10 months. He invested $85,000 in what she called a real estate development opportunity in Madison. The project never existed. After she got the money, she disappeared. Marcus's marriage ended. He lost custody of his kids. He filed a police report, but it went nowhere. He was too embarrassed to push it. Paul slid a photo across the desk. Marcus Reynolds with his arm around Vanessa at what looked like a restaurant. Same dark hair, same confident smile. The photo was dated March 2019. Oh, victim number 2. Paul continued, opening the 2nd folder. Robert Daniels, 39, financial manager in Minneapolis. Met Vanessa in 2020, 8-month affair. She pitched him on a cryptocurrency trading scheme. He invested $52,000. Again, nothing real behind it. His marriage survived barely. He didn't report it because of the shame. Another photo. Robert Daniels and Vanessa at a wine bar, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing. The pattern is identical, Paul said. She targets married men, corporate types, ages 35 to 45. Meets them at conferences or networking events. Starts an affair. Around month 6 or 7, she introduces a business opportunity. They invest anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. Then she vanishes. I stared at the photos. Same woman. Same tactics. Same devastation left behind. How did you find this? I asked. I have contacts in law enforcement. Off-the-record searches, social media archaeology. These photos were deleted, but I recovered them from cached pages. I also found message threads. The language she uses is almost identical in all three cases. This is our future. We'll be rich together. Your wife doesn't understand you like I do. My stomach turned. Jonathan's the third. Yes. Paul pulled out another folder, this one marked with Jonathan's name. Let me show you the financials. He spread out bank statements from Jonathan and Jessica's joint checking account. Highlighted withdrawals marched down the pages in yellow marker. Over the past 18 months, $60,000 has been withdrawn from this account, Paul said. It started small, $2,000 to $3,000 at a time, easy to miss or explain away. But in the last 6 months, the amounts got bigger. The largest single withdrawal was $30,000 2 months ago. February. Right around when Jonathan had probably told Vanessa he was all in. I traced where the money went. Paul continued. No business expenses, nothing legitimate. Luxury hotels in Chicago, the Peninsula, the Langham, designer shopping, Nordstrom Saks, spa packages, high-end restaurants. It's all personal spending. He pulled out another document. 3 months ago, Vanessa registered a business V. Collins Marketing Solutions. Jonathan is listed as co-founder. I leaned forward. Is it real? The registration is real. The business isn't. Look at the address. He showed me a UPS store in Wauwatosa, a mailbox rental. No LLC filing. No tax ID. No business license. No clients. The website exists, but it's smoke and mirrors, stock photos, generic copy, fake testimonials. It's a prop to make Jonathan believe they're building something. Paul paused, then slid one more document across the desk. I recovered deleted emails between Jonathan and Vanessa. This one was sent 3 weeks ago. I read it, my hands starting to shake. From Jonathan Carson to Vanessa Collins. Date March 28th. Subject Our Future VO. I've been thinking about our timeline. Once the business starts generating real revenue, your projections say Q3. I'll move forward with the divorce. Quietly. Jessica won't suspect the new income exists, and I can structure the settlement to protect our assets. Then we can finally start fresh together. I love you. This is really happening. I read it twice, then 3 times. My son wasn't just betraying his wife. He was planning to rob her blind while doing it. He's going to hide the money, I said quietly. Yes, or he thinks he is. But William, there is no business. There's no revenue coming. Vanessa is stringing him along until she's extracted everything she can, then she'll disappear just like she did with Marcus and Robert. I looked up at Paul. Does Andrew Foster know? Andrew Foster. Paul said carefully, is a major in the U.S. Army currently stationed at Fort McCoy. He comes home on weekends. According to what I've found, he has no idea his wife is having an affair. No idea she's a con artist. No idea she's done this twice before. He deserves to know. Paul nodded slowly. I agree. But William, once we tell him this becomes bigger. It's not just your family anymore. It's his too. And if he's military, he's going to react. Strongly. I thought about Jessica's exhausted face, Grace's whispered confession. Noah playing with his toys, oblivious. I thought about my son's cold calculation in that email structure, the settlement to protect our assets. Then I thought about Andrew Foster, a military officer serving his country, coming home to a wife who was systematically destroying families for profit. He deserves the truth, I said finally. We tell him. Paul studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. I'll reach out through back channels. I have contacts at Fort McCoy. We'll arrange a meeting. But William, be prepared. Once Andrew knows this is going to move fast, he's not going to wait around. Good. I said, my voice harder than I'd heard it in years. Neither am I. Paul gathered the folders and locked them in his filing cabinet. What about Jonathan? Are you going to confront him? I stood up, my lawyer's mind already 3 steps ahead. Not yet. If I confront him now, he'll warn Vanessa. She'll disappear before we can stop her. No, we're going to let this play out a little longer. We're going to document everything, and when the time comes, we're going to take her down properly. And Jonathan... I looked at the bank statement still spread across Paul's desk. $60,000. Jessica's money, Grace and Noah's security. Gone. Jonathan made his choices, I said quietly. Now he'll face the consequences. As I walked out of Paul's office into the cool April morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Thanks again for coming to dinner yesterday. The kids loved seeing you. I stared at that message, sweet, grateful, completely unaware, and felt rage and grief war inside me. She had no idea her husband was planning to divorce her and hide their money. She had no idea he'd already stolen $60,000. She had no idea the man she'd trusted for 9 years had become someone capable of this level of betrayal. But she would know. Soon. Because I'd made Grace a promise. And I intended to keep it. I spent Friday night alone in my study, staring at the military contact information Paul had sent. Major Andrew Foster, Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. One call would blow up 2 families completely. I sat at Susan's piano in the dark, not playing, just thinking. A memory surfaced sharp and clear. Summer 1998. Jonathan was 10. He'd promised to help harvest grapes, but wanted to go to the beach with friends instead. Susan had stopped him at the door, hands on his shoulders. When you promise something, you keep it, she'd said. Even when it's hard. That's what makes a man, keeping your word when it costs you something. Jonathan had looked up with serious eyes. I promise, Mom. I won't break promises. He'd stayed and worked. Susan had been so proud. Where did that boy go? Another memory, harder. April 2022. Susan's hospital room. 3 days before she died, she'd taken my hand weakly but insistently. William, promised me something. Take care of Jonathan, but don't let him forget who he is. What do you mean? Her eyes still sharp despite morphine held mine. He has your intelligence, but intelligence isn't character. He needs to choose character. Promise me you'll show him, even if it's hard. I'd promised. I will, Susan. Now 3 years later, I finally understood what she'd meant. Show him character. Not by telling him, by demonstrating it, even when it costs everything. The war inside me was brutal. Every fatherly instinct screamed to protect Jonathan. Keep it quiet. Handle it privately. That's what fathers do, right? But my conscience. Susan's voice said something else. Protecting his mistakes isn't love. It's enabling. I thought about Jessica's exhausted face, Grace whispering, "Mommy cries at night." Andrew Foster deployed trusting his wife. Marcus Reynolds and Robert Daniels destroyed by Vanessa before Jonathan. How many more victims if no one stopped her? How would Jonathan ever learn if no one stopped him? Susan's voice clear. Show him character, William, even if it's hard. I picked up my phone. Saturday morning, May 3rd, 7:00 a.m. I dialed Andrew Foster's military number. My hands were steady from 40 years of courtroom training, but my mouth was dry. 2 rings. Major Andrew Foster speaking. Major Foster. My name is William Carson, calling from Wisconsin. I have information about your wife, Vanessa, and my son, Jonathan. I believe you deserve to know the truth. Long silence. Then carefully, please continue, sir. I told him everything. The 18-month affair, the photographs, the fake business, the $60,000 stolen. The pattern: 2 previous victims, now Jonathan. I spoke like delivering courtroom evidence, factual, chronological, controlled. Major, my son is complicit. I take full responsibility, but you need to know what's been happening while you've been serving. Send me the evidence, Andrew said, voice tight. My military email. I sent the encrypted files, heard him typing opening attachments. His breathing changed. I see, he said quietly. I see my wife with your son. Silence. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. Mr. Carson, I've been deployed 6 months. I send home $4,000 every month. I trusted her completely. He stopped. She's been doing this in our home. A bitter laugh. I was planning to surprise her. Fly home early next month. I guess the surprise is on me. I heard him move somewhere private. Then his military discipline returned. Professor Carson, thank you for your integrity. It takes courage to expose your own son. Not many men would do that. Shame and pride warred in my chest. When I get home, I'll request emergency leave immediately. Can we meet? Andrew's voice was steadier now. I'd like to coordinate. Your daughter-in-law deserves to know. We can help each other ensure both our spouses face consequences. Absolutely. Whatever you need. One more thing, sir. Andrew paused. I salute your honor. You chose what's right over what's easy. That's rare. After the call ended, I sat as dawn light crept through the windows. Lake Michigan was gray and calm outside the view Susan had loved. I'd just exposed my own son, handed evidence to a man who had every right to destroy Jonathan's life. Set in motion events that would tear apart our family. But I knew with absolute certainty that Susan would be proud. This was what she'd meant in that hospital room. Show him character. Not by protecting him from consequences, but by demonstrating that some principles matter more than blood. Jonathan had promised his mother at age 10 that he'd keep his word. He'd broken that promise 1,000 times since. Now someone had to show him what keeping promises really meant, even if it cost me my son. I'd kept my promise to Susan. Finally. I stood and walked to the window. The sun was rising over the lake, painting the water gold and pink. A new day. The day everything would change. In 2 weeks, Andrew Foster would be home. We'd meet coordinate, confront them together. Jessica would learn the truth. Jonathan would face consequences. And maybe, just maybe, my son would finally learn what his mother had tried to teach him 27 years ago. Character isn't what you do when it's easy. It's what you do when it costs you everything. Susan had known that. She'd lived it every day. Now it was my turn. Sunday, May 4th. I met Diane Richardson at her law office in Madison. We'd been colleagues for 30 years. She'd handled dozens of family law matters for my corporate clients. She was one of Wisconsin's best, sharp, strategic, and relentless in court. I spread everything across her conference table. Photos from Stone Cottage. Bank statements showing $60,000 withdrawn. Paul's investigation files on Vanessa's previous victims. The fake business registration. Jonathan's emails about hiding assets. Diane reviewed it all in silence, reading glasses perched on her nose, making notes on a legal pad. When she looked up, her expression was grim. This is very bad for Jonathan, she said, but very good for Jessica's case. She explained the legal strategy methodically. Wisconsin is typically no-fault divorce, but financial misconduct changes everything. We can argue fault divorce based on adultery and financial fraud. The $60,000, that's dissipation of marital assets. Jessica can demand reimbursement, plus a larger share of remaining property. She tapped the bank statements. The pattern is deliberate. Small withdrawals at first, then escalating. The $30,000 withdrawal 2 months ago is egregious. Combined with his emails about hiding future income, we prove he planned to defraud her all along. What about custody? That's where this gets powerful. Courts care about parental judgment. Jonathan demonstrated catastrophically poor judgment, lying, stealing from his family, prioritizing an affair over his children's welfare. We argue for primary custody to Jessica, with Jonathan getting supervised visitation initially. Supervised. He's been involved with a woman committing criminal fraud. A judge will want stability verified before unsupervised time with the children. She closed the folder and removed her glasses, looking at me directly. "Oh, William, do you understand what you're doing? You're building a case against your own son. This will destroy him financially, reimbursement, higher support, possibly losing his home. It will devastate his custody rights. When this becomes public, it will damage his career permanently." She paused. "Are you ready for that? Because once we file, there's no going back." I thought about Jessica's exhausted face, Grace's whispered worry, Susan's journal entry about choosing each other every day. The promise I'd made show him character. "I'm ready to do what's right," I said. "Even if it costs me my son." Diane nodded slowly. "One more thing. You need to tell Jessica, before we file anything, she deserves to hear this from family, not from a lawyer's letter." "Can you do that?" Fear gripped me, but I nodded. "I'll tell her." "Soon, William. She needs time to process." Wednesday, May 7th. Another family dinner at Jonathan's house. This time I watched with prosecutor's eyes. Jonathan answered his phone during dinner twice. The second time he left the table for 15 minutes. When he returned, Jessica apologized for him. "Big project at work. You know how it is." But I saw her hands tremble serving dessert. After dinner, I helped with dishes. We worked in silence until she dropped a glass. It shattered on the kitchen floor. Jessica stared at the broken pieces. "I'm so clumsy lately," she said, kneeling to clean up. Her hands shook. "Jessica, are you okay? You look exhausted." She forced a smile. "Just busy with the kids and teaching. I'm fine." Noah wandered in, rubbing his eyes, supposed to be in bed. He looked at his mother, then me. "Mommy sad," he said simply. "Daddy yells." Jessica's face tightened, but she recovered quickly. "Noah, sweetie, go back to bed." Grace appeared carrying a math worksheet. "Grandpa, can you help? Daddy's too busy and Mom doesn't understand fractions, and I don't want to make her feel worse." My heart broke. This 8-year-old was protecting her mother from feeling inadequate. The weight of this fracturing family was crushing her small shoulders. I helped Grace with homework while Jessica cleaned up. When Jonathan returned from another work call at 8 p.m., phone still in hand, he smiled. "Sorry, Dad. Crisis at the office. I need to run back there for an hour." 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. Jessica's face fell. She nodded silently. Her hands gripped the counter-edge knuckles white. She was holding on by the thinnest thread, and I was about to cut it. Thursday night, May 8th. I sat alone in my study, staring at my phone. Tomorrow morning, I would tell Jessica everything. The affair, the money, the con, the plan to divorce her while hiding assets. I would destroy her world with truth. And tomorrow evening, I would confront my son. 2 conversations, 2 explosions, 1 family torn apart. I thought about Diane's question. "Are you ready to destroy your son?" The answer was yes, because destroying his lies was the only way to save what was left. I picked up my phone and dialed Jessica's number. She answered on the second ring. William, is everything okay? Jessica, can you come to my house tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock? We need to talk about Jonathan. About your marriage. Long silence. I could hear her breathing. Should I be scared? She asked softly. I closed my eyes. Yes. Another pause. Okay. I'll be there. Come alone. Don't tell Jonathan. Okay, she whispered. After we hung up, I sat staring at the phone. Tomorrow at 10, everything would change. Then I made the second call. To my son. If you're still with me at this point, comment and let me know, are you rooting for William? Or do you think he's going too far? I genuinely want to hear where you stand. One note. While the emotions here are deeply real, some details have been dramatized for storytelling. If that doesn't resonate with you, feel free to move on to something else. Friday evening, May 9th. After calling Jessica that morning, telling her to come tomorrow at 10, I made another call to my son. Jonathan, come to my house tonight. 8 o'clock. Come alone. We need to talk. He'd hesitated. Tonight's tough, Dad. I've got... This isn't optional. Be here. Silence. Then warily, okay, is something wrong? We'll talk when you get here. He arrived at 8 p.m., looking relaxed, car keys in hand. No suspicion in his eyes. Dress shirt, no tie. That easy smile I'd seen 1,000 times. Hey, Dad, what's going on? Everything okay? I didn't answer. I walked to the dining table and slid a photograph across the surface. He glanced down. His face drained completely white. The photo showed stone cottage. The window. 2 figures visible inside against firelight. Time-stamped April 15th, 2:03 p.m. His eyes moved from the photo to me, back to the photo. His mouth opened-closed. Dad, this isn't what it looks like. I slid a second photo across. Then what is it? I can explain. Sit down. He sat. The chair scraped against hardwood. I remained standing. Mom's cottage. April 15th, 2 o'clock. I came to meet George Matthews. I arrived early. I paused. And I saw you. Jonathan stood abruptly. Dad, it was just once. She doesn't mean anything. I swear. Sit down, because I'm about to tell you exactly how much of a mistake this is. He sat. He looked sick. I shifted into the mode that had won cases for 40 years. Systematic. Evidence-based. Her name is Vanessa Collins. 42 years old, marketing executive, Milwaukee. You met her 18 months ago. This affair has been going on for 18 months, Jonathan. Not once. His face went from white to gray. How did you investigated me, your own son. Anger flickered. What gives you the right? Something inside me snapped. I leaned forward, both hands on the table, voice rising. What gives me the right? You used your mother's cottage. You brought another woman to the place she loved most in this world. You desecrated her memory. You're stealing from your wife. You're abandoning your children. And you ask, what gives me the right? My voice cracked. I'm your father. That gives me every right. Jonathan collapsed back into his chair. It's not stealing. The money's for business. Vanessa and I are starting a company together. It's an investment. When it takes off, I'll pay everything back. I pulled out Paul's thick report and slid it across the table. There is no business, Jonathan. Sit there and let me show you who your business partner really is. Just then, 9 p.m., exactly as I'd arranged, the doorbell rang. Jonathan looked up confused. Who? Paul Jensen stepped inside laptop bag over his shoulder, expression professionally neutral. "Mr. Carson," Paul said formally to Jonathan. "Your father asked me to be here. I need you to see something." He set his laptop on the dining table and opened the first file. Marcus Reynolds, 2018, Chicago, Vice President of Software Development, met Vanessa Collins at a marketing conference. 10-month affair. He invested $85,000 in what she told him was a real estate development project in Madison. Paul's voice was clinical. The project never existed. She disappeared with the money. His marriage ended. He lost custody of his children. A photo appeared Marcus with Vanessa at a restaurant, smiling intimate. Jonathan squinted at the screen. "That's not the same." Robert Daniels, 2020, Minneapolis. Paul pulled up another file. Financial manager, 8-month affair. Invested $52,000 in a cryptocurrency trading scheme she pitched. Also fake. His marriage barely survived. Another photo. Different man, same Vanessa. This is coincidence," Jonathan protested weakly. Paul opened an email document. "After I tracked down Marcus Reynolds, he agreed to cooperate with the investigation. He provided emails Vanessa sent him in 2019. Let me read one." Paul read aloud. "Married guys are the easiest. They're already guilty, already hiding. They won't report me because they'd have to admit the affair. It's perfect." Jonathan stared at the screen, read the words once, twice. His hands began to tremble. Paul continued without mercy. "V. Collins Marketing Solutions, the business you think you're building together. Registered address, UPS store in Wauwatosa. A mailbox rental. No LLC filing. No tax ID, no business license. The website exists, but it's a template, stock photos, generic copy, fake testimonials." He pulled up bank statements with yellow highlighting marching down the pages. $60,000 withdrawn from your joint account with Jessica over 18 months. Want to know where it went? Paul scrolled through transactions. Peninsula Hotel Chicago, The Langham, Nordstrom Designer Section, Saks Fifth Avenue, spa packages at Jean Juarez, the Capitol Grill restaurant. Zero business expenses, Mr. Carson. Zero, all personal luxury spending. Jonathan's face collapsed, complete realization washing over him in devastating waves. "Dad," he whispered, looking at me. His eyes were red. "I thought she loved me." Those 6 words nearly destroyed me. I sat down across from him, my anger replaced by something harder to bear, grief. "She never loved you. She's a con artist. This is what she does. Finds successful married men, makes them fall in love, convinces them to invest in fake businesses, takes their money, disappears. But we were going to..." His voice died. I pulled out one more document. His own email to Vanessa dated March 28th. I'd read it 3 times already, my hands shaking each time. "Read this," I said, out loud. His hands trembled as he took the paper. He read silently first, and I watched his face crumple. "Once the business starts generating revenue, I'll move forward with the divorce. Quietly. Jessica won't suspect the new income exists, and I can structure the settlement to protect our assets." He stopped reading, put the paper down, covered his face with his hands. "You were planning to rob your own wife," I said quietly. "Hide assets. Divorce her while she was blind to everything. Except none of it was real, Jonathan. There was no business, no future. Just a con artist taking you for everything you had." His shoulders shook. I thought I was finally doing something big, something that would make me more than just middle management in Madison. I thought Vanessa saw something in me that Jessica never did. Jessica saw everything in you, I said. She married you. She gave you 2 beautiful children. She's been holding your family together while you've been tearing it apart. Silence. Just the wall clock ticking, Susan's clock marking time the way it had for 40 years. Jonathan, tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Jessica is coming to this house. I'm going to tell her everything, the affair, the money, Vanessa's pattern, your plan to hide assets and divorce her. She's going to learn her husband destroyed their family for a woman who never loved him. His head snapped up. Dad, please. I held up my hand. You have 2 choices. You can be here when she arrives. You can face her. You can tell her the truth yourself, take responsibility, and start trying to make this right. Or you can be a coward, run away, and let me tell her alone. I stood up. But either way, she's going to know. And son, you need to decide who you want to be. The man your mother raised, the one who promised her, at age 10, that he'd keep his word. Or the man who threw away his family for a con artist who saw you as nothing but a mark. I walked to the door. Paul followed, closing his laptop. Jonathan sat at Susan's dining table, surrounded by evidence of his own destruction, staring at nothing. Outside, Paul asked quietly, "What do you think he'll do?" I looked back through the window at my son, broken, lost, finally seeing the truth. "I don't know," I said, "but tomorrow morning at 10, we'll all find out." Saturday morning, May 10th, 9:55 a.m. I watched Jessica's white Lexus SUV pull slowly into my driveway. She sat motionless behind the wheel for a full minute before stepping out. She moved toward my door like someone walking to their execution. Jonathan had chosen not to come, the coward's way. I opened the door before she could knock. Jessica had dressed carefully, nice blouse, makeup, hair pulled back, trying to maintain composure. But her hands trembled, gripping her purse. "Come in. Can I get you coffee?" She shook her head. I don't think I could swallow anything. We sat at Susan's dining table, the same table where I'd confronted Jonathan 12 hours ago. Jessica placed her purse carefully beside her chair, movements controlled and deliberate. She looked around. "Where's Jonathan? I told him to be here. He chose not to come." Something flickered across her face, confirmation of a fear she'd been carrying. "So it's very bad." Not a question. I sat across from her. "Jessica, how long have you known something was wrong?" Long silence. Then softly, 6 months, maybe longer. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. What were the signs? Perfume on his shirts. Not mine, something expensive. Late nights. Phone face down when I walked in. He'd flinch when I touched him like I was interrupting something. She looked up. The emotional distance, like he was somewhere else entirely. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because if I said it out loud, it would be real." I pulled the folder across. "I need you to look at these. You deserve to know the truth." She opened it slowly. The first photo showed stone cottage. The window. Jonathan and a dark-haired woman intimate on Susan's daybed. Jessica stared for a long time. No tears. Just silence. Her finger traced the cottage. "That's Mom Susan's cottage," she said, voice eerily calm. I nodded. "He brought her there, to his mother's place." "Yes, I'm sorry." Silence. Then, "How long?" 18 months. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, and the money. I pulled out bank statements. Yellow highlighting marked $60,000 in withdrawals. Jessica's fingers traced the numbers. Our savings. Grace's college fund. Noah's future. Not just to her, to a business that doesn't exist. I showed her the fake V. Collins registration. UPS store address. No LLC, no tax ID. Told her about Vanessa's pattern. Marcus Reynolds, Chicago, 2018, lost $85,000. Robert Daniels, Minneapolis, 2020, $52,000. She's a con artist. She's done this twice before. Targets married men, makes them fall in love, takes their money, disappears. Jessica processed quietly, turning pages. Photos of Vanessa with previous victims. Email evidence. Luxury hotel receipts. Then I pulled out Jonathan's email to Vanessa dated March 28th. There's one more thing. She read it once, then again. Once the business starts generating revenue, I'll move forward with the divorce. Quietly. Jessica won't suspect the new income. She looked up, and I saw something harder in her eyes now. He was going to wait until he thought he was rich, then divorce me so he wouldn't have to share anything. I wanted to lie. Yes, that was his plan. Jessica stood, abruptly walked to the window, stared out for a full minute. When she turned back, something had changed. The fear was overlaid with resolve. I want a divorce, she said clearly, and I want full custody. Diane Richardson is ready to take your case, one of Wisconsin's best family law attorneys. Jessica's face crumpled. William, I don't know how. I'm just a part-time teacher. I can't afford. I held up my hand. Stop. You won't pay anything. Everything's ready. But Jessica, you're not alone. Not anymore. Her eyes filled with tears for the first time. Grace asked if I was sick, like Grandma Susan, because she hears me crying at night. Her voice broke. My 8-year-old is worried about me. You were protecting your children. Now we're going to protect them properly. Grace and Noah deserve better. So do you. She nodded, wiping her eyes. What happens next? Monday, 9 a.m., we meet Diane. We file for divorce and primary custody. Wisconsin is usually no fault, but financial misconduct changes that. You'll get a larger asset share and reimbursement for the $60,000. And custody. Based on Jonathan's poor judgment affair, financial fraud, prioritizing a con artist over his children, we argue primary custody to you. He'll likely get supervised visitation initially. Jessica absorbed this. He'll hate me. He did this to himself. You're refusing to be his victim. She looked at the evidence spread on the table. I loved him. Even when I suspected, I kept hoping I was wrong. I know. Grace and Noah love him too. They can still love him, but they deserve to know actions have consequences. That marriage means something. That family is worth fighting for. She picked up her purse. When do we start? Monday morning. Diane's office. Okay. She hesitated. Thank you for not protecting him at my expense. Your family too, and you're the one who needs protecting. She hugged me quick and fierce. When she pulled back, there was resolve in her eyes. I need to pick up Grace and Noah from my sisters. Figure out how to tell them. Not everything. Not yet. Just that you and Daddy are having problems. Keep it simple. She nodded. They'll ask questions. And we'll answer honestly when they do. But let them be kids a little longer. Jessica walked to the door, turned back. Is Jonathan okay? Even after everything she worried about him. I don't know. He's not answering my calls. Tell him. She stopped. Never mind. There's nothing left to say. After she left, I sat at Susan's table, surrounded by evidence of my son's destruction. My phone stayed silent. Jonathan hadn't called, hadn't texted, had vanished into shame and denial. Tomorrow, Jessica would start building her new life. With Diane, with my support, with the law on her side. And Jonathan would face the consequences of his choices. Just like I'd promised Susan I'd teach him. Sunday afternoon, May 11th. I'd told Jessica about Andrew Foster yesterday, Vanessa's husband, the military officer who'd been serving in Germany while his wife betrayed him. Now he was here in my living room, meeting the woman whose husband had helped destroy his marriage. Andrew Foster arrived at 2 p.m. in full uniform straight from the airport. 44 years old, tall military bearing evident in every controlled movement. He stood in my doorway with a duffel bag over his shoulder. "Professor Carson, thank you for having me." Jessica was already seated on the couch, hands clasped nervously. I made the introduction. "Jessica Carson, this is Major Andrew Foster." Andrew extended his hand formally. "Ma'am, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." Jessica stood to shake his hand. "Your wife and my husband." Andrew nodded. "I know. Professor Carson told me everything." We sat Jessica on the couch, Andrew in the armchair, me nearby. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Andrew leaned forward. "Mrs. Carson, may I ask how long your husband's trips typically lasted?" Jessica blinked at the question. "Usually 3 or 4 days, sometimes a week. He travels for work frequently, or..." She stopped. "Or he said he did." "I've been deployed 6 months at a time," Andrew said. "Germany, joint military operations. I come home once a month for 1 week." Understanding flickered across Jessica's face. "So when you were deployed..." Vanessa had 5 weeks completely free every month. She told me she was visiting her sister in Phoenix when I couldn't reach her. Jessica's voice was quiet. "Last fall, Jonathan suggested I go to Chicago with friends for a weekend. Said I needed a break from the kids. I thought it was sweet." She looked at Andrew. "Now I wonder." "She was probably with him," Andrew confirmed. "When you were away." A strange bond was forming between them, two people tied together by shared betrayal. "I sent money home," Andrew continued. $4,000 a month from my military pay. She said it was for the house for savings." "And he took our savings," Jessica said. 60,000. Gave it to her. They looked at each other, a moment of understanding passing between strangers. "When you're deployed," Andrew said slowly, "trust is all you have. You can't do your job if you're worrying about home. So you trust, completely." His jaw tightened. "She used that trust against me." Jessica nodded. "I trusted him too. Even when I knew something was wrong, I kept trusting. Because I thought that's what marriage meant." Andrew sat back. "Professor Carson and I discussed confronting them simultaneously. That way neither can warn the other. Neither can run." He looked at Jessica. "Ma'am, I know this is difficult. But if you're willing, I think we should do this together. Vanessa needs to face what she's done. And your husband does too." Jessica's voice was steady. "I agree." Within an hour, Diane Richardson arrived. Despite it being Sunday, she'd come immediately when I called. She spread documents across my coffee table, all business. Wisconsin is a one-party consent state for recording. Everything said can be used in court. We need to plan this carefully. She looked at Jessica. "You'll invite Jonathan to dinner here. Sunday, May 18th, 6 p.m. Tell him it's a family dinner that William wants to reconnect." "He'll come," Jessica said quietly. "Good. While you're here with Jonathan, Major Foster will confront Vanessa at their apartment in Fox Point." Diane glanced at Andrew. We'll connect both locations via video call, split-screen confrontation. They'll see each other. They'll see us. No one can deny. No one can lie. Where will Grace and Noah be? Jessica asked. Your mother's house, I said. They don't need to witness this, Diane continued. Everything said will be recorded and can be used in divorce proceedings. Jessica, you need to stay calm. Don't yell, don't threaten. State facts clearly. Let the evidence speak. What do I say? Jessica's voice wavered. Diane handed her a notepad. We'll practice, but the key points you know about the affair. You know about the money. You know about Vanessa's pattern. And you're filing for divorce and full custody. For the next hour, Jessica practiced. Her voice was shaky, at first uncertain, but with each repetition, it grew steadier, stronger. I watched the transformation from frightened wife to resolved woman. You know about the 18 months, Jessica said, reading from notes. You know about the $60,000. You know about Marcus Reynolds and Robert Daniels. You know this was never real. Good, Diane said. Remember, stay controlled. The calmer you are, the more powerful your words become. Andrew spoke up. I'll handle Vanessa. She responds to authority. When she sees I have all the evidence, she'll try to negotiate. I won't let her. Diane nodded approval. Major Foster, your military background will be helpful. Vanessa's used to manipulating emotions. You won't give her that opening. As the sun began setting, Diane packed her documents. But before leaving, she looked at Jessica seriously. Are you ready for this? Because once we start, there's no going back. This will end your marriage. Are you completely sure? Jessica's hands were clasped on the table, steady now, not trembling like they'd been yesterday. My marriage ended 18 months ago when he chose her, she said clearly. I just didn't know yet. Now I do. And yes, I'm ready. Sunday morning, May 18th, the day of reckoning. Andrew had flown from Germany using emergency leave, arriving late Saturday night. Jessica had dropped Grace and Noah at her mother's house that morning, telling them Grandpa was hosting an adult dinner. My phone buzzed at 11 a.m., a text from Jonathan. Looking forward to Dad's dinner tonight. Been too long. He had no idea what was waiting. I stood in my dining room, setting the table with Susan's finest china, the set she'd inherited from her mother, the one we used for important occasions. Somehow, it felt right to use it now. As I placed the last plate, I whispered to the empty room, Susan, help me do this right. The house was silent except for the ticking of her clock on the mantel, but I felt her presence, had felt it all week in every decision I'd made. At 5:45 p.m., Andrew would be in position at Vanessa's apartment. At 6 p.m., Jonathan would arrive here. And at 6:15 p.m., we'd connect the video call. Split screen. No escape. Complete exposure. Jessica arrived at 5:30 p.m. dressed simply, but with quiet strength in her eyes. Are you ready? I asked. She looked at Susan's china, at the careful preparation, at the evidence folder waiting on the sideboard. Yes, she said. Let's finish this. Sunday evening, May 18th, 5:55 p.m. Jonathan arrived 5 minutes early, punctuality one of Susan's lessons that had stuck. He carried a bottle of wine, ironically, her favorite label, and wore an easy smile. He had no idea his life was about to shatter. Hey, Dad. He stepped inside, looking around. Where's Jessica? She's coming right. I didn't answer immediately. Just gestured toward the dining room. He walked in and stopped. Susan's finest china was laid out formally, folders arranged at precise intervals. Everything deliberate, ritualistic. His smile faded. Dad, what's this? I remained standing at the head of the table. Mom's Cottage. April 15th, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I slid the first photograph across the polished surface. Jonathan froze, wine bottle still gripped in his hand. His face moved through stages, confusion, recognition, horror. "Dad, I can explain." "Sit down, Jonathan." He sat slowly, placing the wine bottle on the table with trembling hands. I didn't sit. Standing gave me the position of authority, judge, not participant. 18 months. Vanessa Collins. $60,000. Jonathan opened his mouth, but I wasn't finished. "And before you think about lying to me again, you should know." Right then, Jessica stepped out from my study. She'd been waiting there exactly as we'd planned. Jonathan's chair crashed backward as he jumped up. "Jessica, I can explain this isn't—" Jessica raised one hand, a calm gesture controlled, and it stopped him mid-sentence. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't lie anymore. Dad showed me everything. The photos, the bank statements, her previous victims, the fake business. I know it all, Jonathan. Every detail." Jonathan looked between us, desperate. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The business was real. I was going to earn it all back. "I did this for us, for the family." "For the family." Jessica's voice, still calm, cut through his excuses. "Which family, Jonathan? The one you have, or the one you plan to have with her after you divorced me?" His mouth opened and closed soundlessly. On the sideboard, Paul Jensen's laptop sat ready. I'd prepared it earlier. Paul connected the video call remotely. The screen split my dining room on the left, Andrew Foster and Vanessa's apartment on the right. Jonathan saw the split screen, not understanding yet. Then he saw Andrew in full military uniform standing in the living room of Jonathan's other life. "What is this?" Jonathan whispered. On screen, we watched Andrew confront Vanessa in real time. Andrew showed her photographs. Vanessa's face on the screen, shock then panic spreading like spilled ink. She started denying immediately. "Andrew, this isn't what you think." Andrew's voice came through the speakers, cold and military precise. "I have photographs, bank records, testimony from Professor Carson's son. Don't insult my intelligence, Vanessa." Jonathan stared at the screen, watching his lover panic. Vanessa's desperation escalated. "Andrew, please, he pursued me." I tried to stop it, and there it was. Vanessa throwing Jonathan under the bus to save herself. Jonathan's face as he realized she'd never loved him. She was blaming him, sacrificing him without hesitation. Jessica stepped forward, standing directly in front of Jonathan. He reached for her automatically. "Jessica, please." She stepped back out of reach. Then she spoke. We'd practiced this, but her words were more powerful than any script could be. I gave you 8 years, she said, voice steady and clear. "I gave you 2 beautiful children. I gave you my trust, my loyalty, my love. I put my career on hold for you. I cooked your favorite meals, even when you didn't come home to eat them. I defended you to friends who said you were changing. I believed you when you said you were working for our future." She paused. I saw tears in her eyes, but her voice didn't break. "You took all of that and threw it away. For $60,000 and a woman who was using you. You're not just foolish, Jonathan. You're cruel." Jonathan tried again. "Jessica, I love you, She continued as if he hadn't spoken. "Don't touch me, don't call me, don't come to the house. Diane Richardson will contact you tomorrow about the divorce. You'll hear about custody arrangements." She looked at him one final time. "And Jonathan, I hope she was worth it, because you've lost everything." Jessica walked to the door. She didn't slam it, just opened it, stepped through and closed it gently behind her. The click of the lock was soft, quiet. Somehow that quiet click was worse than any slamming door could have been. After Jessica left, Jonathan collapsed into his chair. He started sobbing deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. I stood at the head of the table watching my son fall apart, watching the consequences he'd earned finally arrive. On the laptop screen, Andrew was still confronting Vanessa. She was crying now, begging. Her mascara ran down her face. She looked nothing like the confident woman in the photographs. 2 marriages ending simultaneously. 2 lives unraveling in parallel. I felt no satisfaction, just a deep, profound sadness, and the certainty that I'd done what had to be done. Jonathan looked up at me through tears. Dad, Vanessa she blamed me. She said I pursued her. Yes, I said quietly. She did. She never loved me, did she? No, son. She never did. He buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. On the table in front of him sat the wine he'd brought Susan's favorite label chosen without knowing its significance. The folders of evidence, the photograph of Stone Cottage, all the pieces of his destruction laid out neatly on Susan's china. What do I do now? He whispered. You face it, I said. You take responsibility. You try to be a father to Grace and Noah, even though you won't be their primary parent anymore. You rebuild what you can, and you learn. You learn what? That some things once broken can't be fixed. That trust is earned over years and destroyed in moments. That your actions have consequences not just for you, but for everyone around you. On screen, Andrew's confrontation with Vanessa was ending. He was telling her to pack a bag, that he'd file for divorce Monday morning, that she'd be hearing from his lawyer and possibly the police. Vanessa was still crying, still trying to negotiate, but Andrew's military discipline held firm. He simply turned away from her, his contempt clear even through the video feed. Paul ended the connection. The screen went dark. Jonathan and I sat in silence. The dining room, Susan's dining room, where we'd had 1,000 family meals, felt heavy with endings. Does Jessica hate me? Jonathan finally asked. I thought about that question carefully. No, I don't think she hates you. I think she's done with you, which might be worse. What's the difference? Hate means there's still emotion, still connection. Being done means, I searched for the right words. It means you no longer matter enough to hate. That truth landed harder than any anger could have. Jonathan stood unsteadily. I should go. Yes. He picked up the wine bottle, still unopened, still useless. Started toward the door, then turned back. Dad, I'm sorry for all of it. For Mom's cottage, for the money, for everything. I know you are, I said, but sorry doesn't fix what you broke. It just means you finally understand what you've lost. He nodded, tears still streaming down his face, and left. I heard his car start, heard it pull away. I sat down finally in Susan's chair at the head of the table. The house was silent except for the ticking of her clock. I'd orchestrated this confrontation, brought everyone together, engineered the split-screen reveal, watched my son's life fall apart in real time. And I'd do it again, because Grace and Noah deserved better. Jessica deserved better. And somewhere Susan was watching, and she deserved to know I'd kept my promise. Show him character, even if it's hard. I'd shown him. God help me, I'd shown him. We just witnessed everything fall apart. If you're still here, leave a comment. If you were in that room, what would you have said? Would you have done what William did? I want to know your take on this. Quick note. This narrative is crafted fiction designed to explore difficult choices. While the emotions feel real, the specific events are dramatized. If this isn't your style, that's completely fine. After Jessica left, I stood in the dining room, looking at my son. Jonathan sat at Susan's table, head buried in his hands, sobbing like I hadn't seen since he was a child. But this time I didn't comfort him. He finally looked up, face-ravaged eyes, bloodshot tears streaking down. "What have I done, Dad? What have I done?" I remained silent. "Say something," he begged. "Yell at me. Anything." I sat down slowly across from him. "What do you want me to say, Jonathan? Tell me how to fix this. Show me how to get her back." I shook my head. "You can't. These are the consequences of your choices. You chose Vanessa. You chose greed. You chose lies. Now you have to live with those choices." "But I didn't mean to," I cut him off. "Yes, you did. Every withdrawal, every lie. Every time you brought that woman to your mother's cottage. You meant all of it." Silence hung heavy between us. His voice broke. "I'm still your son." I looked at him for a long time. "Are you?" And I genuinely didn't know the answer. The silence stretched, painful and raw. Finally, I continued. "You want sympathy. You won't get any from me. But if you want to survive this, you will. You have to choose how. You can sit here drowning in self-pity, or you can stand up, face what you've done, and try to become a better man." I paused. "Not for Jessica, she's done with you. Not for me. For Grace. For Noah. They still need a father. Maybe not the father you were, but the father you could become." Jonathan whispered, Did Jessica ask about me?" I considered lying to make it easier, but he'd asked for truth. "No," I said. "She didn't." His face collapsed completely. But I added, "Grace did, though. She asked if you're okay. If you're sad. If you'll ever be happy again. That little girl loves you, Jonathan. Despite everything. Don't waste that." He nodded, unable to speak. He left around 7 o'clock, a broken man. I stayed alone in the house, cleaning up, putting away Susan's china piece by careful piece. Jonathan's wine bottle, still unopened, sat on the kitchen counter. I stared at it and felt anger rising, not at Jonathan exactly, but at the whole terrible situation. At 9 o'clock, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jessica standing there with Grace and Noah. The children wore pajamas, carrying overnight bags. Jessica's eyes were red but dry now. "I can't go home yet," she said quietly. "Can we stay here?" "Of course," I said, immediately stepping aside. Grace looked up at me. "Grandpa, why aren't we going home?" I knelt to her eye level. "Sometimes we need a change of scenery, sweetheart." Noah, only 4, just wanted to explore. He ran off immediately, investigating every corner of the house. I set up the guest rooms. Susan's old sewing room for Grace, the main guest room for Jessica and Noah. I ordered pizza for the kids. They didn't know what had happened. Thought this was just an adventure. I let them eat in front of the TV, breaking my usual rules, but tonight was different. Jessica couldn't eat. I found her sitting by Susan's piano in the living room, so after I'd settled the children. "Susan used to play when she was sad," I said gently. "She said music could heal." Jessica's fingers touched the keys, but didn't press down. "I never knew what to say to you, William. You're so accomplished, a law professor respected even in retirement, and I'm just a part-time teacher. I always felt unworthy around you." I sat beside her on the piano bench. "Jessica, you're a good mother, a faithful wife, a kind person. Those things are more valuable than any achievement." Then she broke, not the calm strength from earlier. This was real, deep sobbing. 8 years, she cried. I gave him 8 years, and I still wasn't enough. I was never enough. I put my arm around her, this woman I'd barely known until recently, who had somehow become family in the truest sense. But you were always enough, I said with certainty. He was the one who wasn't. Don't ever confuse his failure with your worth. She cried on my shoulder for a long time. Upstairs, I heard Grace's voice singing softly. A lullaby, Susan's lullaby, the one she used to sing to Jonathan when he was small. Grace was singing it to Noah now. The sound drifted down, sweet and bitter simultaneously. A song from one generation echoing in a house where another generation's love had collapsed. When Jessica's tears finally subsided, she pulled back, wiping her face. I'm sorry. You've already done so much. Don't apologize. You're family. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. How to be alone, how to tell the kids, how to start over at 32. One day at a time, I said. Tomorrow we meet with Diane. We start the legal process. We figure out custody schedules and financial arrangements. And we protect Grace and Noah as much as we can. She nodded. They're going to ask questions. And we'll answer honestly, age-appropriately, but honestly. Kids are resilient, Jessica, more than we give them credit for. Upstairs, the lullaby ended. I heard Grace tucking Noah in her 8-year-old voice, patient and gentle. Then her footsteps padding to her own room. Jessica stood. I should check on them. Go ahead. I'll be down here if you need anything. After she went upstairs, I sat alone at Susan's piano. My fingers found the keys, the same melody Grace had been singing. I hadn't played in 3 years, but the song came back easily. Susan had taught me this lullaby when Jonathan was born. I played it through once for her memory, for the family we'd built, for the wreckage we were now navigating. When I finished, I whispered to the empty room. Susan, I kept my promise. I showed him character, even though it cost me my son. The house was quiet, except for the settling sounds of an old building, creaks and sighs familiar and comforting. Upstairs were Jessica, Grace, and Noah, refugees from Jonathan's destruction, but safe here. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and logistics, tears and difficult conversations, but tonight they were protected. I made a silent promise then, to Susan, to Jessica, to the children sleeping upstairs. This family would survive. It looked different now, broken and reassembled in unexpected ways. But it would survive. I would make sure of it. Because that's what family does. Not the family you're born into necessarily, but the family you choose. The family you protect. The family you rebuild from ruins. Grace's voice echoed in my memory, singing Susan's lullaby. One generation passing love to the next, despite everything. And maybe that was enough. Monday morning, May 19th, 8:47 a.m. Diane Richardson filed for divorce in Madison County Court. By noon, Jonathan had been served at his office. By evening, the first battle in a war he couldn't win had begun. The divorce petition was precise and devastating: fault divorce based on adultery and financial misconduct. Demand for reimbursement of $60,000 in dissipated marital assets. Request for primary custody to Jessica. Jonathan would receive only supervised visitation initially. Child support calculations attached. The court clerk's timestamp read 8:47 a.m. the moment Jonathan's marriage officially ended. The process server found him at his marketing company office around noon. I didn't witness it, but I imagined the humiliation being handed legal papers in front of colleagues, everyone watching, everyone knowing. Within hours, word had spread through the entire company. That afternoon, Jessica sat in my kitchen staring at Diane's retainer agreement. $10,000. I can't afford this, she said quietly. Gee, I don't have anywhere near. I wrote the check without hesitation, and slid it across the table. "William, I can't let you—" "Your family," I interrupted. "Consider this a gift, not a loan. Susan would want this." "I do too." Tears filled her eyes, but she accepted. "I'll pay you back someday." "No need. Just be a good mother to those kids. That's payment enough." Wednesday, May 21st. Diane called me mid-morning. "Jonathan's lawyer just contacted me. They want to settle. Avoid court." "What does that mean?" "It means he's terrified." "Good. We have him exactly where we want him." That evening, I found a voicemail on my phone. Jonathan's voice broken and desperate. "Dad, please. I need to talk to you. I don't know what to do anymore. She won't answer my calls. I can't see the kids. I lost my job." His voice choked. "I've lost everything. Please. You're all I have left." I sat holding the phone for a long time. Then I deleted the message. Guilt washed over me immediately. Then anger at myself for feeling guilty. This was the hardest part, watching my son suffer the consequences of his choices and knowing I had to let him face them alone. Meanwhile, Andrew Foster's divorce proceeded in parallel. He'd filed through military channels using a JAG lawyer, but Wisconsin jurisdiction applied since Vanessa was a state resident. Military divorces could move faster in some ways. Andrew had resources and authority that civilians didn't. Andrew had confronted Vanessa on Sunday, just as we had with Jonathan. He'd recorded everything. When she tried to deny, "Andrew, this isn't what you think," his response was cold and precise. "I have photographs, bank records, testimony from Professor Carson's son. Don't insult my intelligence, Vanessa." She'd panicked, then tried a different tactic. "I'll tell them you abused me. Who do you think they'll believe?" Andrew's recording had caught that threat perfectly, evidence of her guilt and willingness to lie. Realizing she was trapped, Vanessa had tried to drain their joint bank account. But Andrew had frozen everything immediately after my phone call weeks ago. Smart military planning. She got nothing. By Thursday, May 22nd, Vanessa had fled Wisconsin entirely. Gone to her sister's place in Phoenix, Arizona. No forwarding address. Friday, May 23rd. I received an email from Andrew Professor Carson. "I wanted you to know I've filed a police report regarding Vanessa's fraud scheme. Your son's case is included along with Marcus Reynolds and Robert Daniels. The district attorney is reviewing, though criminal prosecution is unlikely. The previous victims won't testify due to shame and embarrassment. But her name is now in the system. If she tries this again, there will be a record. I also want to thank you again. You could have stayed silent, protected your son. Instead, you chose honor. That's rare. Your son lost a father today, not because you stopped loving him, but because you loved him enough to hold him accountable. Sir, I salute you. Major Andrew Foster." I read that email 3 times, then saved it. 1 week later, a LinkedIn notification appeared on my phone. Vanessa Collins had updated her profile. Name changed to Vanessa Stevens. Location changed to Phoenix, Arizona. New city, new identity. Ready to hunt her next victim. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Paul Jensen. "Can you track her for the next guy, whoever he is? He should get a warning." Paul responded within an hour. "Already on it. I've created a comprehensive file. If anyone searches her name, any of her names, they'll find it. Background check red flags, court records, pattern documentation. She won't have it easy next time." I sat at my desk that evening, looking at Vanessa's new LinkedIn profile photo. She was smiling the same smile she'd used to con my son, to manipulate Andrew to destroy Marcus Reynolds and Robert Daniels. But now there was a digital trail. A warning system. If her next target bothered to look, they'd find it. It wasn't justice. Not really. She'd escaped criminal charges, changed her name, moved states. She was free to try again. But it was something. A flag in the system. A police report on file. A digital breadcrumb trail for anyone smart enough to follow it. Sometimes something is all we can do. Sometimes making the next victim's escape a little easier is the only justice available. I closed the laptop and looked at the photo on my desk, Susan and me at the vineyard 20 years ago. She'd have understood. She'd always understood the difference between what we wish we could do and what we actually can. We did what we could, I told her photo. It'll have to be enough. The house was quiet. Upstairs, Jessica was putting Grace and Noah to bed, reading them stories, singing Susan's lullaby, building a new normal from the wreckage of the old. Tomorrow would bring more legal battles, custody hearings, financial calculations, the slow, grinding machinery of divorce. But tonight, we had peace. Fragile and temporary, but real. And somewhere in Phoenix, Vanessa Stevens was updating her profile looking for her next mark. But this time, there would be a warning. This time, someone might look twice. It wasn't much, but it was something. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I took Grace to the vineyard. Noah was napping back at my house with Jessica. I wanted to show Grace where her grandmother had planted the vines with her own hands. But Grace had questions I wasn't sure I knew how to answer. We walked between the rows in the warm, early June afternoon. The vines were budding new growth stretching toward the sun. I pointed to the original Chardonnay vines Susan had planted in 1985. Grandma Susan planted these before your dad was even born. Grace touched the leaves gently. Mommy says Grandma was very kind. The kindest person I ever knew, I confirmed. We walked in silence for a while. Then Grace stopped. Grandpa, are Mommy and Daddy getting divorced? My heart clenched. I'd known this day was coming, but I'd hoped for more time. I knelt down to her level. Who told you that? Nobody told me. But Mommy cries at night, and we're living at your house, and Daddy doesn't come anymore. This 8-year-old had connected the dots herself. Yes, sweetheart. They are. Grace nodded as if she'd expected it. It's okay, Grandpa. I already knew. Then she asked a harder question. Did Daddy do something bad? I chose age-appropriate honesty. Your daddy made choices that hurt people. Did he hurt Mommy? Yes, sweetheart, he did. Grace picked up a fallen grape leaf, examining it carefully. Is it Daddy's fault? I could have softened it, but she deserved the truth. Yes, it is. Adults make choices, and sometimes those choices have consequences. Your dad chose to do things that broke trust. And when trust breaks, sometimes relationships break too. Grace thought about this. Like when I broke your coffee mug and you said I had to face consequences, I couldn't use my tablet for a day. Yes, I said. Exactly like that. But much bigger. She nodded slowly. Much, much bigger. We kept walking. Then Grace asked something that shattered me. Grandpa, will you still be my grandpa? Even when Mommy and Daddy aren't married anymore. This brilliant child was afraid of losing me, too. I picked her up. She was getting big, but not too big yet, and looked straight into her eyes. Susan's eyes. Grace, I will always be your grandpa. Always. Nothing your dad does can change that. Nothing your mom does can change that. You're stuck with me forever. She hugged me tight. Good. Because I was worried you'd leave too. I held her furious at Jonathan all over again for making a child afraid like this. 3 weeks after the confrontation, mid-June, I got a call. Jonathan's boss. Former boss. Professor Carson, I thought you should know. Jonathan hasn't shown up for work in 5 days. We're concerned. Jonathan had quit the week of the confrontation before they could fire him. But apparently, he'd been coming in trying to finish projects. Until now. I thanked the man and hung up. I debated whether to check on Jonathan. Decided I had to. He was still my son, no matter how angry I was. I drove to Jonathan's apartment address. A small complex, not a nice area. 3rd floor, no elevator. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. Finally heard movement. The door opened. Jonathan looked destroyed. Unshaven, maybe 2 weeks' worth. Sweatpants, stained t-shirt. The apartment behind him was dark, cluttered. He sounded surprised, hopeful. Can I come in? He stepped aside. The apartment was grim. A mattress on the floor, a few pieces of furniture, empty takeout containers. Jonathan sat on the couch. I remained standing. Your boss called, said you haven't been going to work. I quit, Jonathan said flatly. The week after everything, before they could fire me, word had spread. Everyone knew. I couldn't face them. Silence. I can't see my kids. He continued, staring into nothing. Only supervised visitation. I keep meaning to schedule it, but what? I don't know what to say to them. Grace is old enough to know I did something wrong. More silence. Then, that 60,000 is gone, Dad. All of it. I'll never get it back. I know, I said. Everyone knows, Jonathan whispered. Friends, co-workers, family. Everyone knows what I did. I looked at my son, the man who'd had everything and thrown it away. Part of me wanted to comfort him. The larger part knew he needed to feel this pain. You want sympathy? I asked. You won't get any from me. He flinched but didn't argue. But I continued sitting down across from him. If you want to survive this, you will. You have to choose to survive. You can sit here in this apartment and drown in self-pity. Or you can stand up, face what you've done, and try to become a better man. Not for Jessica, she's done with you. Not for me. For Grace. For Noah. They still need a father. Maybe not the father you were. The father you can become. Jonathan looked at me. I don't know how to be that person. Start by scheduling that visitation. Show up. Be consistent. Let them see you're trying. I stood to leave. At the door, Jonathan called out, Dad. I turned. Does Jessica ever ask about me? The truth, no, she doesn't. His face crumbled. But I added, Grace does, though. She asks if you're okay, if you're sad, if you'll ever be happy again. That little girl loves you, Jonathan, despite everything you've done. Don't waste that. I left his apartment feeling, I wasn't sure what I felt. Sad, disappointed, but also a small spark of hope. Because Jonathan had listened, and maybe, just maybe, he'd start climbing out of that hole. Not for me, not for Jessica, for his kids. And that would be a start. 6 months later. October. The custody hearing took place on a cold October morning, leaves crunching outside the Madison family court building. 6 months since I'd discovered my son with another woman in my wife's cottage. 6 months that had changed everything. Tuesday morning, October 21st. I arrived early and sat on the bench outside the courtroom. Jessica arrived at 9:45. The hearing was scheduled for 10. She looked different, stronger. Her hair was shorter, her posture more confident. Diane Richardson walked beside her carrying a briefcase full of evidence. I stood. Jessica saw me. Dad William, you came. Of course I came. We walked into the courtroom together. I took a seat in the gallery behind Jessica's table. Jonathan arrived at 9:55, taking his seat across the aisle. He looked older than 6 months should have aged a person. Gray at his temples now. Deeper lines around his eyes, but also clean-shaven pressed suit on time. His attorney sat beside him, a young woman who looked competent. Our eyes met across the courtroom. He nodded slightly. I nodded back. Not forgiveness, acknowledgement. The bailiff called, "All rise." Judge Patricia Mills entered late 50s, experienced family court judge with a reputation for fairness. Please be seated. We're here for Carson versus Carson custody determination. Are we ready to proceed? Both attorneys confirmed. Diane presented Jessica's case methodically. Evidence of the affair photos submitted as Exhibit A. Financial misconduct bank statements showing $60,000 dissipated over 18 months. Exhibit B, the timeline of deception. Jonathan's compliance with supervised visitation. He'd shown up every week for 6 months. Jessica's stability, full-time teaching position, stable home, children, thriving. Your Honor, Mrs. Carson seeks to protect her children while their father rebuilds the trust he destroyed. Diane concluded. Diane called Jessica to the stand. Jessica took the oath, her voice steady. Mrs. Carson, describe what happened in May. Jessica recounted the discovery, the confrontation, the evidence of affair and financial fraud. Her voice remained calm, factual. What are you asking the court for? Primary custody of Grace and Noah. I don't want to separate them from their father, Your Honor. But I need to protect them. He lied to them for 18 months. He abandoned them when they needed him most. He needs to earn back their trust. Jonathan's attorney cross-examined gently. Mrs. Carson hasn't, Mr. Carson attended every supervised visitation. Yes. Been consistent and engaged. Yes. Does Grace seem happy when she sees her father? Jessica paused. Yes, but she's cautious. She's protecting herself. Jonathan's attorney called Jonathan to the stand. He admitted the affair, admitted the financial misconduct. I made terrible choices, Your Honor. I hurt everyone I loved. I've been in therapy weekly since May. I have a new job. I'm not the man I was. I'm trying to be better. His voice cracked. I love my kids. Grace and Noah are my whole world. I understand why Jessica doesn't trust me, but I'm asking for a chance to be their father. The father I'm trying to become. My written statement was submitted as Exhibit C. I hadn't testified directly due to conflict of interest, but my statement supported Jessica's petition while acknowledging Jonathan's apparent efforts to change. Judge Mills reviewed the documents in silence. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Carson, you made choices over 18 months that prioritized your desires over your family's well-being. You dissipated marital assets. You engaged in a prolonged affair. You demonstrated consistently poor judgment. She paused. The court finds that Mrs. Jessica Carson has been the stable, consistent parent throughout this marriage, and especially during this dissolution. Therefore, primary physical custody is awarded to Mrs. Carson. Jonathan's shoulders sagged. However, Judge Mills continued, this court believes children benefit from relationships with both parents when appropriate. Mr. Carson, you've shown consistent attendance at supervised visitation. The therapist's report indicates progress. Therefore, the court grants unsupervised parenting time. Every other weekend, Friday evening through Sunday evening. Holidays divided per standard schedule. Child support is set at $2,500 per month. She looked at Jonathan. Use this time wisely, Mr. Carson. Rebuild that trust. Be the father your children deserve. Then to Jessica. Mrs. Carson, the court commends your grace throughout these proceedings. Asset division followed. Jessica retained the marital home. Jonathan's retirement accounts split 60-40 in Jessica's favor. The $60,000 to be reimbursed through a payment plan from Jonathan's future earnings. The gavel struck. Court adjourned. Outside, the October air was crisp. Jessica took my arm. Thank you, Dad, for everything, for telling me, for helping me, for choosing me over him. I stopped and looked at her. Jessica, I didn't choose you over Jonathan. I chose what was right. Sometimes those two things are the same. Sometimes they're not. I squeezed her hand. But in this case, they were. Across the parking lot, Jonathan was getting into his car alone. Our eyes met again. He nodded once. I nodded back. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement. He was trying. That meant something. As Jessica and I walked to my car, I thought about Susan, what she would say about all this. I think she'd be proud. Not proud of Jonathan's mistakes, proud of how I'd handled them, of how I'd chosen justice over comfort, of how Jessica found strength she didn't know she had, of how even in brokenness there could be grace. And that, I thought, was what Susan would have wanted most. Spring returned to Door County, Wisconsin. 1 year since I'd discovered my son's betrayal in my wife's cottage. The vines were budding again, just as they had when Susan was alive. And for the first time in 4 years, the stone cottage was being used again. But this time by the right people. I was at the vineyard on a Saturday afternoon. Spring was in full bloom, vines budding Susan's roses, returning after a brutal winter, the air warm and promising. The cottage had been renovated over the winter months. Jessica and I had worked on it together, planning each detail carefully. Fresh paint covered the walls, pale blue, Susan's favorite color. New bedding, new curtains, but Susan's paintings still hung on the walls. That was important. Her presence remained. Jessica used the cottage now for peaceful purposes. She graded papers from her teaching job there. She read mystery novels in the afternoon sun, discovering she loved them just as Susan had. It was her quiet space away from the demands of single motherhood. Grace, now 9 years old in 4th grade, was painting at Susan's old easel. "Grandpa, I'm drawing the vineyard," she called, showing me her work. The painting depicted the rows of vines, the cottage, and stick figures representing us. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Grandma Susan would love it." Noah, now 5 in kindergarten, was helping me inspect the vines. He wore the small gardening gloves I'd bought him, taking his work very seriously. "Grandpa, this one's growing." "Shy," he pointed excitedly. "Sure is, buddy. You're taking good care of them." Jessica had secured a full-time teaching position last September. 5th grade at the same elementary school where she'd been substituting. Better pay, benefits, stability. She also helped me at the vineyard on weekends. We'd reopened the small tasting room, Susan's dream. Not large scale, just weekends selling local wines. Jessica managed it on Saturday afternoons. She was good at it, warm with customers, knowledgeable about the wines. Today's project was planting new vines. I'd ordered a new variety, Marquette grapes. Cold, hardy, disease-resistant, resilient. Like us. Jessica joked when I'd explained the choice. I smiled. Grace and Noah were excited to help. We dug holes together, me supervising them working. Noah's hole was crooked, but he was proud. Grace's was perfect. She was precise, just like Susan. "When do they make grapes?" "Grandpa," Noah asked. 3 years, I explained. "You have to wait. Take care of them, be patient, water them, protect them from frost, and in 3 years they'll give you grapes." Grace, wise beyond her 9 years, said quietly, like people. I looked at her. What do you mean, sweetheart? You have to take care of people and wait for them to grow too. I knelt down to her level. Exactly like people, Grace. Exactly. We finished planting 6 new vines total. Noah watered enthusiastically, soaking himself in the process. Jessica laughed a real laugh, the first I'd heard from her in a long time. The afternoon wore on. The sun began its descent toward Lake Michigan. We sat on the cottage porch, the same porch where Susan and I had spent countless evenings. Jessica and I in the chairs, Grace and Noah on the steps. The view stretched across the water sunset, painting the sky orange and pink. Grace asked suddenly, "Grandpa, are we still a family?" Jessica tensed slightly, but I stayed calm. What do you mean? Well, Mommy and Daddy aren't together anymore, and Daddy doesn't live with us. So are we still a family? Are you still our family? I looked at Jessica. She was watching me, curious how I'd answer. I thought about the past year, about Jessica staying at my house those first weeks, about helping her move into an apartment, then later buying her a house. I'd called it an early inheritance, though we both knew what it really was, about every Sunday dinner at my table, about Grace's school plays I'd attended, about teaching Noah to fish, about Jessica calling me when she felt overwhelmed, about becoming the father she'd never really had, about becoming the grandfather Grace and Noah needed. Yes, I said firmly. We are a family. Maybe not the way we started, but still a family. Sometimes family is blood. You're born into it and that's that. But sometimes family is choice. We choose each other. Every single day. Both kinds are real. Both kinds are family. Grace thought about this. So we chose each other. Yes, sweetheart, we did. Noah, not understanding everything but feeling reassured, piped up, "Good. I like our family." Jessica's eyes were wet, but she was smiling. The sun finished setting. We cleaned up to head home, Jessica and the kids to their house, me back to Milwaukee. As they prepared to leave, Jessica hugged me. "Thank you, Dad William, for everything this year, for being our constant." "You're welcome," I said. "But really, thank you for teaching me what chosen family means." After they left, I stood alone at the cottage, watching their car disappear down the gravel road. 1 year ago, I'd discovered betrayal here. Today, I'd witnessed healing. The vineyard had come back to life. Not with the family I'd thought I had, with the family I'd chosen, and who had chosen me back. Susan would understand. I think she'd even approve. The roses she'd planted 40 years ago were blooming again along the cottage wall. I walked over, touched the soft petals. Red roses, her favorite. They'd survived the harsh winter. They'd survived neglect. They'd survived everything. Just like us. I locked the cottage door and walked back toward the main house. The marquette vines we'd planted today looked small and fragile in their fresh dug holes. In 3 years, they'd produce fruit. In 3 years, Grace would be 12, Noah would be 8. In 3 years, this new configuration of family would be even stronger, the roots dug even deeper. I thought about Jonathan. He saw Grace and Noah every other weekend now. The visits went well, according to Jessica. He was trying. He was consistent. He wasn't the father he'd been, but maybe he was becoming the father he could be. I hadn't seen him since the courthouse in October. We'd exchanged emails about logistical matters, his repayment schedule, holiday arrangements. Nothing personal. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But that was okay. Some breaks don't fully heal. Some relationships don't recover. That was the truth I'd learned this year. But I'd also learned this new relationships can grow in the space left behind. Chosen family can be just as strong as blood family. Maybe stronger, because every day you wake up and choose it again. As I drove away from the vineyard that evening, the setting sun in my rearview mirror, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the absence of pain, not the forgetting of what had happened, but the quiet knowledge that we'd survived, that we'd rebuilt, that the family sitting on that porch this afternoon, laughing, planting, choosing each other, was real and whole and enough. Susan had always said that grapes and people weren't so different. Both needed good soil, consistent care, and time to grow. Both could survive harsh winters if their roots were strong enough. Both could produce something beautiful if tended with love. She'd been right. She'd been right about everything. Summer arrived. June, 15 months since the discovery. Jonathan came to the vineyard for the first time since I'd found him there with Vanessa. He was coming to see his children, and perhaps to face his own ghosts. Saturday afternoon, mid-June, warm and bright. Jonathan arrived for his weekend visitation. Jessica had asked me to host boundaries, she'd said. She wouldn't be present. I felt anxious. It had been a long time since I'd spent extended time with Jonathan since the confrontation. His car pulled in a different one. He'd sold the expensive sedan, now drove something modest. Jonathan stepped out, looking around the vineyard, as if seeing it for the first time. Grace and Noah were playing in the yard. Noah saw him first. "Daddy." He ran toward Jonathan. Noah was still young enough to forgive easily. Jonathan scooped him up, held him tight, eyes squeezed shut. Grace watched from the porch. She didn't run, polite but distant. Jonathan approached. "Hey, Gracie," she corrected him. "It's Grace." Boundary established. Jonathan nodded, respecting it. "Hey, Grace, can I hug you?" She thought about it, then nodded. An awkward hug, but a start. Jonathan had brought gifts. I noticed they weren't expensive toys to buy affection. For Noah, a baseball and glove. For Grace, a book series she'd mentioned liking. He'd been listening during their visits. Thoughtful gifts. We spent the afternoon together, me supervising from a distance. Jonathan played catch with Noah in the field. I watched them, remembering teaching Jonathan the same way. Grace sat on the porch, reading her new book, observing. After a while, Jonathan approached Grace. "Grace, can we talk? Just you and me?" She looked at me. I nodded permission. They walked toward the stone cottage. I followed at a distance, protective. Jonathan didn't go inside. I suspected he couldn't yet. They sat on the cottage steps. I stood far enough not to hear words, but I could see body language. Jonathan was talking, gesturing. Grace listened, arms crossed at first, then gradually relaxing. I saw Jonathan wipe his eyes. Then, and this broke my heart and healed it simultaneously, Grace leaned her head against her father's shoulder. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a door opening. A possibility. After about 20 minutes, Grace got up and ran back to play with Noah. Jonathan remained sitting alone on the steps. I walked over, sat beside him. We were silent for several minutes. Then Jonathan spoke. "I'm sorry, Dad. I know I've said that before. But I mean it. For everything. For Mom's cottage. For the lies. For all of it." I nodded. "I know you're sorry." More silence. "Do you think," Jonathan asked quietly, "Grace will ever really forgive me?" I chose my words carefully. I think children have an amazing capacity for resilience and forgiveness. But you have to earn it, Jonathan, every single day. Show up, be consistent, keep your promises, and eventually, maybe. I paused, then added, "Grace asked me once if I'd still be her grandpa after the divorce. She was afraid of losing people. Don't make her afraid again. Jonathan nodded, understanding the warning. They left late afternoon his weekend with the kids. I watched them drive away feeling complicated. Time jump fall/winter, 18 months since the discovery. Jessica called me one evening, voice nervous. Dad, William, I need to talk to you. Coffee tomorrow morning. We met at a Madison cafe the next morning. Jessica looked different, lighter somehow. I've been seeing someone, she blurted out. My protective instinct flared. Oh, she laughed at my reaction. Don't worry, he's kind, I think. She told me about David, science teacher at her school. 7th grade. Divorced 3 years ago, no kids. He'd asked her to dinner last week. She'd been terrified, but said yes. I haven't dated I can't even remember, over 10 years. I'm scared, William. What if I can't trust anyone again? What if I choose wrong again? I reached across the table, squeezed her hand. Not everyone is Jonathan. Don't let his betrayal close the door to good things. A few weeks later, Jessica asked if she could bring David to meet me. I want your opinion, she said. I trust your judgment. They came to my Milwaukee house for dinner. David was early 30s, wore glasses, had a kind face, looked nervous, a good sign. It showed he cared what I thought. I asked questions, not interrogation, but maybe a little. He was respectful, understood Jessica's past without treating her as damaged. He talked about his students with genuine passion, asked about Susan, a good sign. Interest in family history. After dinner, he volunteered to help with dishes without being asked. After David left, Jessica asked, What do you think? I was honest. I think he's kind. I think he looks at you the way you deserve to be looked at. Jessica's eyes filled. I never thought I'd be here. Divorced at 33. 2 kids. Afraid to trust anyone again. But you know what? She smiled through tears. I'm also stronger than I've ever been. I have a job I love. I have my kids. I have the vineyard. I have you and... She paused. I found myself again. Jonathan took so much, but he didn't take everything. I didn't let him. When Jessica left that evening, she hugged me at the door. Dad, William, I know this is strange, but you've been more of a father to me in the past 1.5 years than anyone else ever was. My dad left when I was 6. I never knew what it felt like to have someone protect me, choose me, stand up for me. She hugged me tighter. Thank you for being the father I never had. I held her, this woman who'd become my daughter in every way that mattered. Thank you, I said, for teaching me that family isn't just blood. It's choice. 2 years after I'd discovered my son's betrayal in my wife's cottage, I stood in that same cottage with a very different family. Not the family I was born into. Not the family I thought I'd have, but the family I'd chosen. And who had chosen me back. Spring returned to Door County. 2 years later, spring. A warm afternoon at the stone cottage. I was hosting a gathering, Jessica, David, her boyfriend of 1 year, Grace now 10, and Noah 6. We sat on the porch overlooking Lake Michigan. Noah climbed into my lap. Grandpa, tell the story about the grapes again. I smiled. About having to wait 3 years. You have to be patient, take care of them, and eventually they give you grapes. Grace, wise beyond her years, added quietly, like people. Mid-afternoon, Jonathan arrived to pick up the kids for his weekend. Exchanges happened here, now neutral territory. He looked healthier than he had in 2 years. Straighter posture, purpose regained. How was their week? He asked Jessica. Good. Grace got an A on her science project. Noah learned to tie his shoes. Small details of cooperative co-parenting. Time had healed some wounds. Jonathan turned to me. "Thanks, Dad, for having them here." I corrected gently. "We're family." His eyes filled, but he nodded. This wasn't obligation. This was choice. Grace ran over. "Dad!" She'd started calling him that again. It had taken over a year. She hugged him, a real hug. Trust rebuilding slowly, one visit at a time. They drove away. Jonathan looked back at the cottage once. Our eyes met. Too much history here. Too much pain, but now also healing. He nodded. I nodded back. Not complete forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Progress. After they left, Jessica looked around the cottage. Susan's paintings, the new furniture, the vines through the windows. "Do you think Mom Susan would be okay with this?" she asked quietly. "Chat with me being here, with everything being so different." I thought carefully before answering. "I think Susan believed in second chances, not for people who broke trust, but for people who got broken. She'd see you here, Jessica. Strong. Healed. She'd see Grace and Noah thriving. She'd see a family that chose to survive, chose each other. Yes. She wouldn't just be okay with it. She'd be proud." Jessica's eyes filled. David squeezed her hand. After they left, I remained alone. I sat in Susan's chair watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. I took her journal from the shelf. For the first time since she'd died, I wrote in it, "Susan, 2 years ago I discovered our son had lost his way. I chose truth over comfort. In doing so, I lost the son I thought I had, but I gained a daughter I never expected. Jessica, Grace, Noah. Family isn't always blood, my love. Sometimes it's choice. You taught me that. I choose them. Every day. Like you taught me. Thank you for that final lesson. Forever yours, William." I closed the journal, returned it to the shelf, stepped outside and locked the cottage door. Not to seal away memories, to preserve them, until the next time our chosen family gathered here. I walked through the rows of vines toward my truck. The vineyard had been silent for so many years, silent with grief, with absence, but now it was alive again, with laughter, with children, with love, complicated, messy, hard-won, but real. Not the family I thought I'd have at this age, but maybe the family I needed, a family that chose to stay, a family I chose back. As I drove toward Milwaukee, I thought about Susan's last words, "Show him character." I did, Susan. I hope I did. And in doing so, I found a family I never expected. Looking back at this family story, I realized the hardest lessons come from the moments we never expect. I thought I was simply pursuing dad revenge when I began investigating my son. But revenge would have been easy, destroying him, walking away, letting anger consume everything. What I chose was harder. I chose truth. I chose accountability. I chose to protect the innocent while holding the guilty responsible. If you're reading this family story, don't be like me in one crucial way. Don't wait until betrayal forces your hand to establish what you truly value. I spent 40 years believing blood was enough to hold a family together. It isn't. Character holds families together. Integrity does. The willingness to choose what's right over what's comfortable, that's what matters. Some might call what I did dad revenge, but it wasn't revenge. Revenge is destruction for its own sake. What I pursued was justice tempered with mercy. I gave Jonathan consequences, yes, but I also gave him a path back. Not to me, perhaps, but to his children, to himself. This family story taught me that family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who chooses you when everything falls apart. Jessica, Grace, and Noah became my family, not through blood, but through crisis healing and daily choice. The Bible says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity." I found that truth not in my son, but in a daughter-in-law who became simply my daughter. My dad revenge, if you can call it that, was refusing to let betrayal have the final word. It was choosing to build something new from the wreckage. It was showing Grace and Noah that adults can face hard truths and still choose love. Don't be like me by waiting for catastrophe to discover what you value. But if catastrophe comes, and it might, remember this: the family you choose can be just as real as the family you're born into. Sometimes more so. God doesn't waste our pain. He redeems it if we let Him. Thank you for walking with me through this journey to its conclusion. I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments below. What would you do if you found yourself in William's position, facing that impossible choice? Your thoughts mean a great deal to me. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing so you won't miss future content. A gentle reminder, while inspired by real-life themes and family dynamics, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this particular narrative doesn't align with your preferences, feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better.